All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Replace Your Income with Kevin and
Steve, how's it going, Kev?
Good Man. How's Canada?
Oh man, it's going well. I'm working my butt off out here. I know that you think that I'm up here on vacation, but I'm actually out of the farmhouse. Our three of our grown up children came or met us out here, and we've been working on rebuilding the deck for my in-laws. It's been a really fun
Nice.
project actually, but it just helped me realize better than ever like what all this gray hair I've got. It's like
Yeah,
this is for real. It's legit. Like as much as people might think I dye my hair gray, like it's natural.
I have some exceptional facial growth. Look at these gray
Yeah,
streaks right here.
I was like,
That,
did you dye your goatee? I was
uh-uh.
like, what?
No, that's just all natural, man. Hey, but
Wow.
I was gonna say, so this is obviously a little bit of a different format. I'm in my office. Steve is in Canada. We are recording the video on Zoom, so the YouTube may look a little bit different. We're not in the studio, and we're recording the audio through a different software. So hopefully it sounds good. Everybody can. We still want to, we love doing the video podcast, so we still want people to be able to see us. But I was going to say something about your adult children out there working. So our kids are at an age now, Steve, where I'm finally seeing how beautiful the idea of child labor can be. And so it's good to know that child labor does not end once they leave your home. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, actually, it gets even better with age.
Okay,
Yeah, because
because they
they've
can
learned
lift more, do
well,
more.
I mean, they've learned like some skills. They've had to do some like work on their own properties. Some of them are married, and so they're doing like chores and stuff. Doing them not because mom and dad are telling them to, but because they want to, make their own house beautiful or take care of their own children or whatever. So it's they've learned some skills and some work ethic, and so actually, I kind of feel like I'm the lazy one. So it's been good. It's been good.
Hey, look, you just can echo the role of CEO with your family, right? And CEOs are really good at having a vision and helping others know what role they can best play. So that's all you're doing.
Yeah, like I took this, I don't know, some kind of a profile test, and it says I'm not very good at like physical labor. So I just like I'm really good at just telling people what to do.
Yeah, that's
So I just
perfect.
tell them what to do. I sit back,
Yeah,
sip my lemonade.
that's perfect. The other thing that I've seen work really well is when my wife asks me to do all the things that I don't want to do. When I do them so poorly, that then she stops asking me to do them. So that's another just a pro tip for everybody out there.
That's another tactic.
Yeah,
Yes.
that works. That works well. Well,
But we're
dude,
loving it up here. It's a lot of fun.
good, good, awesome. Well, it's good to be with you. So, Steve and I were look. It's kind of been fun. I mean, Steve, I've heard Steve rant on how awesome it is to buy real estate in this market right now on numerous occasions. We had agents that were in the office, and Steve gets so fired up and passionate. And then we had our partners from Specialized Property Management in the office, and Steve was getting fired up. And I've heard Steve get fired up just talking to us around the office. And I love how passionate you are, Steve, about why right now is such a good time to buy real estate. And you guys hear that all the time on the podcast, that right now is a good time to buy. And we're not here to just say, now's a good time to buy. I mean, you could go back and listen to other podcasts and hear us talk about why now's a good time to buy, and we'll touch on it today. But what I thought would be interesting, because you've been so passionate about it, Steve, I was like, if I think back to the entire company history, almost every single economic condition, and we've seen a few of them, the passion for why now is the right time to buy real estate has been the same. And I was working on the book. We are getting so close to being done with that thing. I have this perfectionism, and so I just keep writing and rewriting. But every time I do it, I improve it. And then Steve, is able to help guide me and add additional stories and additional content after I do another rewrite. And so we've had this amazing collaborative process. But we have a chapter in the book that is a principle, and the principle is do it now. And it kind of comes from W. Clement Stone, who had this sort of mantra that he repeated over and over and over again. Do it now, do it now, do it now. And we relate that to why now is always a good time to buy. And we talk about it all the time on the podcast. But I was going through this chapter, and Steve, I just felt like there was something missing. And I thought, what if people think we're kidding? What if people think that we are only just saying that we're somehow opportunists and we're only just ever saying buy now because that's what our company needs in order to continue? And I mean, while there's truth to that, the reality is it does not matter what the economy has been. So today we're going to go on a little history lesson and we're going to talk about what did we do when the world was collapsing during the Great Recession. Then what did we do post-recession? Then what did we do when the whole world came to a screeching halt during COVID? Then what are we doing as we're persevering through COVID? And then what's happening now in a post-COVID world? Because the crazy thing is, we have now gone through what feels like 2 entire market cycles since we started this company, and we've always been passionately ranting that real estate is awesome to buy. And so, Steve, I think we should get in the time machine. Let's get in the DeLorean and let's set the date for like 2000, like early 2008, before the collapse, and let's talk about a little of what it felt like then and what we decided to do during that phase. Because my goal for you guys listening today is this. I want you to hear what our reaction was during that time. Then I want you to hear what it was like after the Great Recession. Then I want you to hear what it was like during COVID. And I mean, that we were doing the podcast during COVID, but I just think it's important to say, look, this is how, regardless of what's going on in real estate, regardless of what aspect of the market is deficient, real estate can make up for the deficiency. And that's the real key. No matter what part of the economy or market is deficient, real estate can make up for or help offset that deficiency.
Yeah. So if we go back to 2008, what we were doing then, I mean, as a company, we just barely got started, right? But, by the end of 2008, 2009, just as like the market crashed, I mean, we had hundreds of clients and we'd helped our clients buy hundreds of homes. Like that was the beginnings. And what's interesting, I don't know if you remember, Kevin, we literally had clients who were at the signing table trying to close on their properties, and just as they were signing, or right after they're signed, or maybe it was right before they signed, the bank that was funding the loan literally went out of business. Like we had that happen a couple of times,
We
right?
did. I was closing the loans at that time. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
remember.
it was pretty dramatic. Like it was like that was one of the craziest times. It's like, are we done before we even started?
Yeah, it's
Like,
crazy.
But as we sat down, I literally remember we sat down in the conference room and we were having this conversation about like what's going on in the market and what are we like, how are we going to help our clients through this? How are we going to get through it as investors ourselves? Because if you remember, Kevin, many of us had been buying properties like unbeknownst to us at the peak of the market. The reality
Right.
is
We didn't know it was the peak.
well, that's just it. Is you never
You never
know when
know.
you're at the peak of any market or at the trough of any market. You just know that you're somewhere in the cycle, and there are different indicators that can help you know approximately maybe where you're at. But most of the time, even the most sophisticated investors and all the pundits and all the experts, they don't know. They usually get it wrong, right?
Yeah.
Because it's
True.
just their guess is as good as anybody's. They
That's
got all
right.
this data and information, but the reality is they don't know. Like they were wrong, during COVID, and wrong during, at the end of COVID and within the last few months. And anyway, so during 2008, 2009, 2010, as we were strategizing, talking about what do we tell our clients, we looked at each other and it was pretty simple. It was like, okay, we helped our clients like literally buy these properties with positive cash flow. That's one of the things that's important, right? Is that there needs to be some cash flow in order to service the property, in order to that's just been one of the principles that we've espoused. There are arguments for how even negative cash flow can be it can still work,
We did a
but
whole
we've always
podcast on it,
advocated.
actually. Yeah.
But even today, the properties, like in order to get a DFY stamp of approval, it has to have a degree of profitability
Yeah.
of net positive cash flow, even on a monthly basis. And so we sat down, we discussed it, we went back to our clients, and we said, hey, here's a strategy. Hang tight. Wait for this to run its course, to go through the cycle, and you're going to be just fine. So collect your $200, $300, $400 a month cash flow and just be patient. and people saw the values of their properties fall. But here's the reality: if you held onto your property, you held and you kept and just kept collecting your cash flow, within a period of time, your properties, the market came back, and in fact, it came screaming back. And every single one of those clients, and gratefully, the vast majority of them kept took our advice and just hung onto the properties, and they ultimately did very, very well. Now, they had to hang on to those properties for 6, 7 years, but in that sixth and seventh and eighth year, like, those properties were life changing for our
That's
clients.
right. Yeah, and so I was gonna say the quote from Charlie Munger that that's also in the book. He said, so that's Warren Buffett's right hand man, and he says the big money is not in the buying and the selling, but in the waiting, and that's really what we saw.
Yeah, the wealth is in the waiting,
Yeah,
absolutely. And so, in talking about and doing this little history lesson, that's what we did then, right?
yeah,
And then of course we helped our clients during that period of time when the market had really crashed, and we are buying properties like brand new homes practically at 40, 50, 60 cents on the dollar. As the market came back, those individuals did extremely well. Now, their cash flows, like Kev, if you remember, cash flows were not very good
no, they weren't.
because people were literally like leaving their homes because they could go rent a property for several $100s less than what their mortgage was.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right.
Because not because interest rates were crazy low or high or whatever. It was because the value of the homes had dropped so significantly that they could just go, you know, let their property go to foreclosure, let somebody buy it, and then rent it out at
Yeah,
lower than what their mortgage was.
no, that's right. It's interesting because when I was thinking about this topic and thinking about what we put in the book, I kind of have this unique point of view from the standpoint of this. I was out doing a lot of seminars and real estate, seminars. And so whether it's been real estate seminars or podcasts or webinars, like I've always kind of been in a position where I'm selling the idea of real estate. And so when I go through, why real estate, you're only going to sell benefits, right? You have to let people know what could be a potential, I don't know, pothole in the road, but you're selling benefits. Now, the reason why I bring that up is I look back to 2008 and 2009, and I was thinking about what were the benefits that we were seeing after the crash during the Great Recession. And if everybody remembers, I mean, you had this massive run up of property appreciation, like Steve said. And then we have all of these banks go out of business. You see mass foreclosure. And so now because you have mass foreclosure, all of a sudden the market was flooded with inventory. Steve and I, for the last year and a half, we've been talking, or 2 years or longer, have been talking about the shortage of supply on the market. Well, you had a reversal, right? After the Great Recession, you had a massive amount of inventory hit the market, but you didn't have anybody that could buy because that inventory came from people that had been foreclosed on, that had got too much mortgage, that had got a little loose with the lending practices at the time because heartbeat loans were a thing. All you had to do was fog a mirror and you could get a loan. There was all that junk that was going on. And so you had a bunch of people in financial dire straits. They were losing their home. And like you said, they could turn around and rent it from somebody who bought it for significantly less and probably pay less than they were paying on their mortgage. But all of these homes hit the market, and because all of these homes hit the market, the price goes down significantly. You got people that are short selling homes, you have homes that are slipping into foreclosure, and then the banks are going back and trying to redeem whatever the money they can if they foreclosed on the property. So they're just trying to kind of hedge their losses. So they were turning around and selling those properties for significantly less. At the time, we were really active at the auctions, right? We had teams that were going to the auction because that was something that was available at that time, was to go and buy properties at the auction. I mean, you remember better than anybody, Steve. I mean, the whole process of what our teams on the ground, because we'd open Phoenix, we'd open up Las Vegas, and shortly thereafter Florida, what our teams on the ground were doing to vet the properties would come out that morning. They would go and drive as many. They would do an initial bit of vetting on this list of properties that were gonna be auctioned off at the courthouse, right? And then they would go and drive these properties. Sometimes they would break windows if they had to get in to see what condition the property was in. They'd go, they'd take a look at it, they'd relay that information to the person that was at the auction. They were bidding, and then that whole process meant that we were able to help our clients buy properties significantly below even. And this was crazy. So you had this insane market where everybody's freaking out. Everybody's in foreclosure. The lending practices, because of the Dodd-Frank legislation, all of a sudden became a lot more difficult to get a loan. You had to be far better qualified. There was less people that could get qualified, but the ones that could buy these homes at really low prices, even after rehab. And what was crazy is, do you remember, Steve? We were helping our clients buy homes at less than the rebuild cost on the insurance, which just simply meant there was going to be a natural upward pressure. But the argument at the time was, oh man, I mean, the market's crazy. I don't know if it's ever going to come back. Everybody's in foreclosure. You know, the economy is going to blow up. All these banks are going out of business. I mean, I think people now, because the real estate market got so good after the Great Recession, I think people have forgot how bad it felt to be in that world. And people were freaked out and didn't want to buy as a result. So what did we do? We found a strategy that took advantage of what the market gave us. The market was giving us low prices and low rents, but low prices in a market that was going to see appreciation because of all the other economic factors. What else do you remember about that time in terms of what we were trying to accomplish?
Well, I mean, here at the end of the day, the advice that we gave our clients then is the same advice that we're giving them today.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
That today is a fantastic time to be buying. And in fact, here's the reality, is that the homes that I purchased at the peak of the market ultimately did just as well as properties that were purchased, 2010, 2011, 2012. At the end of the day, those properties performed phenomenally well. They just performed in a slightly different way in terms of like timing, right?
Yeah.
But the economic gain was as projected. And in fact, the timeline really didn't change much, if any, based on the projections of the performers at that time that we put together. So, what I remember most about that time is that the philosophy, the theory, the practice, the strategy has remained consistent moving forward, even though market conditions are a little bit different.
Yeah. So let me be super clear to everybody. So the homes we were buying back then with our clients, right? 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage, nice areas that had good economic indicators and factors. It's exactly what we were doing here, what we're doing today, and what we did during the 2010s. There's really no difference, right? So post 2010s, so in that, that lead up to the recession, it was 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage. Okay, in good areas, in good neighborhoods that kind of checked all the boxes. After all of the Great Recession stuff started to settle down, we had stimulus check, and it was all this. We had TARP funds, we had all this stuff. The Dodd-Frank Wall Street reform passed in 2010, which now all of a sudden it was like, whoa. Now if we're going to go get financing, we've got to put 20% down. We got to be well qualified. We have to be a full doc investor, meaning you had to prove everything. None of this, this is how much I make, I promise, which is kind of what existed before that. And I remember people freaking out, Steve, that whoa, how are we even gonna go get, now we have to have this 20% down. I can't just write everything off on my taxes because I'm self-employed. How am I gonna qualify for a property? And once again, the idea was, do whatever it takes to buy 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage in nice areas with good economic indicators that will rent well. And that's really, I feel like, what the game was in the 2010s. So if you look at like the Great Recession, we were buying with the potential of appreciation. And I remember, at that time it was like, look, the game is buy below rebuild cost, appreciation, and cash flow. If you get any cash flow, that's awesome. That's kind of like frosting on the cake, right? Then, Steve, the pendulum swung in a slightly different direction where kind of like mid 2010s, we had really well qualified buyers. All of the excess inventory had kind of been gobbled up, and it returned to a little bit more of a normal market. We were at 5-6% interest rates around that time frame, and people had to be well qualified. And now, I don't know if you remember, but now it was, I'm sure you remember, now it was a situation where we're buying properties that are cash flowing really well. Why? Because the rental market exploded during the Great Recession because nobody could buy. And so since nobody could buy, everybody had to rent. So again, supply and demand. So now there's this greater supply of renters. There's so much greater supply of renters, less of a supply of rentable homes because the demand was so high, and so it forced rents up. So now we're going and buying properties that we're not buying at the basement bargain levels that we were during the Great Recession. But now the beauty is rents have come back and we're still getting a little appreciation. But then we were saying, look, the reason to buy real estate is because you're going to get cash flow. Cash is king. This was the time when the 1% rule was thriving, right? Everybody was like, oh, I'm not going to buy unless it's 1% of purchase price. Because that was the environment. Rents were really high. Purchase prices were coming up. And so we would tell people even then, it's like, look, today you're buying a 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage type home in a great neighborhood that's going to attract a good renter that's going to be there for a long time because they can't really qualify to buy anything anytime soon. So the demand is high. You always want to own supply where demand is high. And now cash flow was king. And we would say, look, appreciation, if it comes, that's the frosting, right? So during the Great Recession, the frosting was cash flow. Then cash flow swung up and appreciation swung down. Prices went up. Appreciation, prices had come up. Appreciation wasn't going through the roof like it did during COVID. It was steady, but we're like, hey, cash flow's a deal. If you get some appreciation, that's awesome. And that was kind of the environment. The pendulum swung from one aspect of real estate to another, but in both scenarios, there was that's why we love real estate. Real estate provides multiple profit centers in multiple ways. You're still getting tax benefits. And even then, I don't think we were even as bullish on the amazingness that comes from the tax savings of real estate or the principal pay down or any of that stuff. Like that was all still present, but we were talking more cash flow at that time because that was the thing that was, frankly, probably the most attractive about real estate at that time. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on something, the supply and demand. What happened during the time that you just described is that builders stopped building.
Yep.
Like almost completely. And so we began this steady decline in supply of affordable homes. And that went on for years, like for literally 10 years, builders didn't really build at volume. But we kept having babies and people, kept growing up and got to the point where they needed properties. And it was before COVID even hit
Yeah.
that we were kind of, again, screaming from at the top of our lungs on top of a mountain. It's hard for people to hear us because we're just this tiny, little breeze uh, in the wind. And there was a massive supply and demand issue. The exact
Yeah.
same thing. We're still seeing it today. And right before COVID, I mean, about a year before COVID, builders started really trying to ramp up. And that's one of the reasons why, if you remember, Kevin, we were having this conversation when COVID hit and all the experts were saying, home prices are going to drop dramatically and there's going to be real big issues in real estate. Number one, the first thing we said is this is not the same situation as we saw in 2008, 2009.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we were saying. Yeah.
Right? Because number one, there was no supply. And so demand was already high. And so we're like, there's no two ways about it. People are wanting to buy homes and builders are trying to build them. And now, the government's put on all kinds of work moratoriums and different things. So that was going to make it even harder. And then because of COVID issues with supplies, everything being, manufactured across the oceans in other countries, it began to be harder than ever to get supplies. People couldn't work, so you couldn't make concrete and you couldn't cut trees and you couldn't produce lumber and you couldn't produce nails and then on top of that, the labor, right? There was all kinds of rules and regulations and people in certain states and certain places couldn't work certain types of industries that were deemed, non-essential. They couldn't work and that kind of, and so it was inevitable that because the prices were going to go up for all of that stuff and demand was still going to be like just massive, that we were just like, we're just not seeing what everybody's yelling about.
Yeah.
Like we think that this is going to be another. It's still just a great time to be buying, and so that's what we saw. That's what we experienced, and now we've fortunately the world has worked itself out of COVID, and there's still a supply issue, but now real estate interest rates are high, mortgage rates are high, and so we've been kind of doing our very best to be as loud as we possibly can to help people understand. Look, back in the 1980s when interest rates, mortgage rates were 16, 17, 18%, if you knew then what you know today, you would have bought as many of those homes as you possibly could have, because if you would have bought 4 or 5 of them and hung on to them, you'd be a multimillionaire today, just based on the equity and appreciation growth that you experienced. And you would have figured out somehow, some way to, take care of that negative cash flow, because rents certainly weren't high enough to, cover an 18% interest rate. And
I,
so what we're
yeah.
saying today, Kev, is exactly the same thing. We're trying to take our experience. It's kind of like, you're sharing what Charlie Munger, he's Warren Buffett's right hand man. And what does Warren Buffett always say? When everybody else is greedy, um, you sell, and when everybody else is fearful, you buy. And right now, everybody is running scared.
Yeah,
Like
they are.
if you look at real estate transactions, they are down. Again, the experts are saying real estate transactions are down 30, 35%. No, they're down 65 plus percent, Kevin.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
like the whole real estate world. There are 3 major real estate players who were on the Fortune 500 list last month who are no longer on the Fortune 500 list.
It's
And it's
crazy.
because real estate transactions are significantly down. And that's one of the other reasons why buying today is such an incredible time. Like a few months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, we call it the ocean was red with blood because
Mm-hmm.
everybody was buying and bidding up prices, and you'd have multiple offers, 10, 20 people, offering on a home. Well, today, the market is normalized that way. It's just a normal market. You now can go out, you can offer on a $300,000 home, you can offer 290, and then they'll counter back at, 297.5, and then you'll settle on 295 and you'll get a little bit of a discount. That's normal today. And that's
Right.
kind of the normal market, which is kind of cool that you can actually go and make an offer and buy a house and not have 20 other people bidding against you. And it's the same thing. We've talked about this. Interest rates aren't high.
No.
They're normal.
Right.
When we got into this game back in 2008, 2009, interest rates were, some were in the sixes, I think, high sixes.
I was doing sevens on
Popped
investment
up into the
properties.
sevens,
Yeah.
and the big difference is that there hadn't just been a dramatic increase in prices
Right.
where that we've currently seen. And so the only difference is that prices have gone up and rents haven't caught up yet.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? You own a property for a few years and rents are going to catch up. And so again, it's a normal market from that standpoint. So it's beautiful. The other thing that's really interesting and that's really normal is that appreciation is normal. It's not climbing in double digits. It's not falling in double digits. It's
That's
just
right.
it's going up at historic norms. Now, having said that, there are some markets where it has dropped, absolutely. But the markets where we're buying, and in many markets across the United States, appreciation is between 3.5% and 5%. That's normal. And guess what? Normal wins big time.
Yeah.
And so that's why to me, like right now is such an exciting time. Kevin, that's why you and I have gone out this year. And I don't know, I think we've done between ourselves individually, partnerships between me and you, partnerships in the company. I think like just us, between you and I, like we're
Yeah.
between I think 6 or 7 properties this year
Yeah.
that we've purchased and accumulated, and there's still half a year to go. And so
Yeah.
I'm excited about continuing to move that forward.
Yeah, it's so interesting. If everybody were to, in our time machine here, you think back to COVID and how scared everybody was, and we knew a couple things. We knew that demand for rent was going to go up simply because everybody was fleeing, and then we saw massive demand go up for buying just because there wasn't any supply. It was this whole weird mix-up. And if you look at what's happening today, if we just look at, so yes, the market is normal. Okay, rents are a little bit lower than maybe we'd like them to be, where our cash flows are lower than we'd like them to be. But listen, rents always take longer to catch up to appreciation. Appreciation has gone through the roof. It's going to take rents longer to catch up. And I had this interesting, I was at a barbecue the other night. We were talking to some friends, and they've been renting for the last 7 years in our neighborhood. He's got a good job. They've got what, 5 kids. He's got a good job, but they are still renting. You know why? Because they can't afford to buy. And as much as they would like to buy a primary residence, they don't have, at that stage where they're at, right? He's in his 30s. So he's established his career. He doesn't have the ability to buy. And there's a lot of people in that stage, right? 20s and 30s that may not have the ability to buy. So they're still having to rent. So for those of us that can buy, not only do we still have a shortage in supply, but if you just look at it from a rental standpoint, there are still people that are saying, especially in certain markets, I don't want to go and buy a home right now. I still want to rent because they are listening to the Teeny Tiny Pockets Brigade. They're worried they don't know what's going to happen in the market. And so as a result, there's an additional pressure on rental real estate. And that's even the case in the markets where we are in, the homes that we're doing. I know everybody probably goes, oh my gosh, everybody should be buying homes around $300,000. Listen, that is still, there are so many people that are still tied to the idea of $200,000 or less on a primary residence for a starter home, that they're looking at a $300,000 mortgage with 5% down. Okay. And they're going, this is unreasonable for me as a first time home buyer, which again has a pressure on rents, which benefits all of us that are investing in real estate. So,
well, Kevin, it's really interesting, really quick on that note. That's one more of the elements that makes, today an interesting and awesome time to be buying. What's interesting to me is, I don't know. A lot of people think that the government is dumb, that they don't know what they're doing. They're making all these mistakes. I kind of have a different opinion. I kind of think that they know what they're doing to a large degree. Like
yeah,
these are all the PhDs, the smart people. And what if you take a look at it, literally, they've raised the interest rates just enough, Kev, to put a mortgage out of reach
yeah.
for they know what people make. They got all the numbers.
Oh,
They
yeah.
know what people make and what they can afford, and they put them just barely out of reach where they can't afford them. So at 7.25 interest, 7 interest, 6.75, 6.5, it just puts them out of reach for the ability to buy a primary residence. Not necessarily because they don't have a down payment or they don't qualify, but
Yeah.
because they don't quite make enough money
Right.
to uh, to afford the mortgage, right?
Yeah. On
And
a
so
monthly basis.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's right, just barely out of range. So guess what's going to hapen? Kev, the demand hasn't gone anywhere. The
Yeah.
demand is
Right.
right there. And
Yeah.
so imagine when interest rates whenever it happens, I don't know it's going to happen next year, 3 years, 5 years from now. I don't, whenever the smart people decide the interest rates need to go back down just a little bit, like there's going to be a flood of individuals who are like, hey, I can finally afford
It's
this.
go time. Yeah.
It's go time. And the market is going to be in that situation again, where the that demand is finally going to be able to afford to buy, and they're going to jump in the market. And now all of a sudden, for those real estate investors who are now saying to themselves as well, I could have bought at 7.25%, but now that interest rates have gone down by 1% or 1.5%, now I'm going to jump in the market too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? What's going to happen? The same thing's going to happen, and there's going to be 5, 10 people bidding on every property again, and
Yep.
prices are going to go up
That's
again,
right.
and
Yep.
the cycle will kind of repeat itself
Mm-hmm.
to a degree, probably not like to the extent or the extreme that it did,
Yeah. Right.
because the smart people who are controlling everything are getting a little bit smarter, and so they're going to kind of pull the levers, whatever. And hey, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a conspiracy guy. Like it's just like I just think that they're doing, like the smart people are doing whatever they do in order to try and manipulate the economy to do what it needs to do. And so the bottom line is they've just raised rates not to punish anybody, but they just know
Yeah.
that they're trying to get inflation under control. Like
Yeah. And I think the inflation reports came back better than expected. So some aspect of it is kind of working, right?
yeah, no, exactly. And so like I say, like they're like I think that they're the smart people. Some people think that they're the dumb people. They don't know what they're doing. I think they do know what they're doing to a large degree. And because what they are doing is because they've raised the interest rates just enough to put it out of reach. the demand is still there, but people can't actually buy them. And so that's so now that's put downward pressure on pricing because the people can't buy them. There aren't five people bidding on them. And so that actually, helps slow the rate at which housing is increasing.
Yep, absolutely. So, guys, we just wanted to jump on and give you the Back to the Future Real Estate Edition, where we jumped in our time machine and we said, look, what was the argument for wanting to buy before the crash? What was the argument for buying after the crash? What was the argument for buying after the Dodd-Frank legislation and after the market started to return to normal? What was the argument to buy then? Then what was the argument to buy during COVID? Then what's the argument to buy now post-COVID? Because the idea is we say it all the time, it's always a good time to buy because real estate will always hedge or make up for some market deficiency. That is the beauty of simple and conservative single-family residential rental real estate, 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage in good economic conditions in the right types of markets that attract good tenants. There's always an aspect because that real estate has multiple profit centers. In the book, I think we list 7 different profit centers in the book about what real estate provides. The ones we generally talk about, there's usually about 4 we talk about, but we go even deeper because, guys, there's always an argument to be made for why you should buy now if you're going to hang on to it for longer than a couple years. And that's the key.
Yeah, and if I can just throw this out as well, that we try to be super transparent, right, with our clients, with everything. And so I'm gonna be super transparent with this with this podcast.
Sure.
Here's my hope, and my hope is to create some FOMO, some fear of missing out, and not because it's like you don't have to buy through us. Like just go get it done somewhere. My hope is that people will obviously come in and do business with us, but the reality is I haven't done my job if I haven't helped you understand, as a real estate investor, that right now is such an amazing time to be buying. And for those people who are just kind of pressing pause and are just waiting again,
yep,
that you're going to look back a few years from this period of time and be like, oh, I did it again. And so here's one of the things is that I've gone through this. Like, I kick myself all the time. I was in this business. I was in this world. I bought a number of properties at the peak of the market. Things crashed, and I did the strategy that I talked about, just held on to the properties. But during the time from 2010 to 2015, I personally pressed pause. I helped hundreds of people buy real estate, but during that time, I did not buy a single home. And I've looked back on that period of time, and I've just said to myself, it's like, why did I stop buying? And so from when I recognized that, when I became conscious to what I had done in my own personal investing world, I promised myself that I was never going to do that again. And so one of my goals, one of my objectives is to just be transparent, to be clear with our clients, with prospective people who are looking at us and looking at real estate investing, and everybody else is being fearful. It's like, you know what? It's like, don't miss out on this incredible opportunity. And it's one of the reasons, Kev, why you and I are jumping in. Is I said this to you at the beginning of the year, is like, Kev, we got to be jumping in. This is such a fantastic time to be buying, like it was a few years ago, and we bought then as well.
Yeah,
like we've been on a buying rampage actually over the last 5 years, and the market has done all kinds of interesting things over the last 5 years. But you and I, and as a company, we've purchased over 40 properties, and it's because of this principle. We write about it in the book that now is the right time to be buying.
That's right. You said it great summary. We hope that you guys enjoyed this little Back to the Future edition of the podcast. What I hope you'll get out of it is don't sit on the bench any longer. It's time to get off the sidelines. It's time to do something. You hear us say that all the time, but we wanted to give you some historical precedent as to why. And so I highly recommend, whether it's working with us or somebody else, you should be in the real estate market right now. We hear from you who listen to the podcast and you say, I'm listening to you guys. I just haven't pulled the trigger yet. I know you're out there. It's time to pull the trigger, okay? It's time to do it because we don't want you to go through kind of what Steve just expressed, podcast where you've got that FOMO, right? Where you're going, oh my gosh, I did it again. I mean, we want you to have FOMO today so that you'll jump in, but we don't want you in 5 years from now or 3 years from now to look back at this podcast in this moment and go, I just should have bought. Look at how much money I missed out on because I didn't buy when I was fearful. And that, I think, is the key. So awesome, Steve. Thanks for joining us from Canada. We hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and we'll talk to you real soon.
See you, everybody.